Hey everybody, Tim here. I'll talk if you'll listen, episode 45, the big 4-5. We're almost at 50, gang, and I did put some things into motion to make episode 50 a special one. I don't want to ruin anything, but at the same time, I don't want to get anybody's hopes up unreasonably so, but I would like to think that episode 50 will be a memorable one. The biggest challenge, though, about making any episode memorable is every episode is memorable to me. So to try to make one stand out more than the other intentionally is a bit of a challenge, to say the least. But a few updates, and then I want to get into today's topics, and hopefully they'll be interesting. Hopefully they won't put you all to sleep. But we're going to be learning together here. So I am going to mention something that will either be extremely admirable or extremely embarrassing, depending on the audience. And I want to have a teachable moment. More specifically, I want to have a learning moment. And hopefully we all can learn together. And that's what I'm looking forward to the most, to be honest with you. That said, some updates first. So first things first, I do have some interviews lined up. Emphasis on some. I only have enough to cover like maybe the next couple of episodes or so. So I need everyone's help. If you're listening to this show right now and you're a supporter of the show, a listener of the show, and you want to help me take this show to the next level, then I need your help. If you personally know someone who listens to the show, and they do not need to be a bigwig, they do not need to be a politician, they do not need to be an entrepreneur, they do not need to be anybody special, just somebody in general who maybe has polarizing opinions, or hell, maybe they're even narrow-minded, or they're closed-minded regarding certain topics, or maybe they're the opposite. Maybe they're extremely open-minded about a lot of topics, and you want to hear their opinions. You want to hear our conversation. Please, please, please put me in touch with them. Get them in touch with me. I would love to have people on the show. And as you all know, I do not discriminate. Older, younger, man, woman, other, any type of person that has something to talk about, something to express, I would love to have them on the show for so many different reasons. One, just to keep the topic, whatever topic they choose to speak about, as long as it aligns with the show, right? I don't want to get anybody on here to talk about the different types of apples. Let's be real. But at the same time, I am a conversationalist at heart. I like to think I'm a pretty damn good host, and I'll try my best to keep the conversation productive and interesting. But I want to solicit everyone's help. I want to have new people on the show. It's always a pleasure to have repeat guests, and I'm looking forward to having some people who were on in the past to have them on again. But I want to get everyone's help. If you're listening, if you know somebody who would want to be on, maybe they have their own podcast and maybe they want to get started with interviewing. Maybe they've been in the podcasting or radio game for a while, and maybe you want to learn a little bit more about their journey, about their story. Please, please, please get them in touch with me. Put me in touch with them, whichever is more applicable, and we can keep it moving from there. I have been much more proactive lately in reaching out to people who I want to have on the show, whether I know them or not. And the response has been positive. It has been positive. It hasn't been at the point where it's disappointing yet. I'm sure there will be opportunity for me to be disappointed very, very soon. There will be opportunity for me to be disappointed. But right now, I'm going to roll with the punches, and I'm going to stay positive. And as long as people keep saying yes, I'll keep having them on the show. Again, as long as the talking point makes sense. So if you've been on the show before, you know how to get in touch with me. If you haven't, then the best method, honestly, is to email me at illtalkifyou'llisten@hotmail.com. That is in the description of every show. And if you are more savvy with social media, then hit me up on the DMs on Twitter. Hit me up in the DMs on Instagram. I started this whole Periscope thing now, so you can follow me on that and we can get the ball rolling. In other areas and other updates, I'm still learning this whole podcasting thing, believe it or not. I know I've been doing it. It'll be 3 years in January, and I have almost 50 episodes out up until this point. But I'd like to think that, you're always a student, right? You never get to the point. One of my lodge brothers had a saying or quote, and I'm going to paraphrase just for the sake of time here. And he says that one of the most dangerous things you could ever do is know. Because once you know for certain, then you kind of stop learning. The gears kind of stop turning a bit. And the next thing you know, you put your feet up, you kick the leg rest out, and you think you can take the foot off the pedal a little bit. And this podcasting thing in some areas is still very much new to me. And as I navigate through my journey that is podcasting, at the end of the day, it's still a hobby. However, I like to categorize it as a serious hobby. It's definitely a serious hobby, something that I've taken up and kind of ran with, and still working through some technical issues. So for the past couple of episodes, you may have noticed some clicking, and I can't even guarantee that it won't be in this episode at the time of this recording. I have no idea. I usually don't discover it until post-production, but there's just this subtle clicking there. And I did a little bit of research on how to figure it out, and other people have experienced it as well, but there hasn't been a clear, definitive solution except for one, and that was uninstalling it and reinstalling it. So, the program, I'm talking about the program that we use to record. The program is called Audacity. So what I decided to do was uninstall Audacity and reinstall a newer version of it, as a matter of fact. So hopefully that clicking has gone bye-bye. It is not there anymore, and we don't have to worry about it. And hopefully it won't be as overbearing as before. So I do apologize for everyone who tolerated it so far. And I appreciate everyone sticking around. When you're not doing this professionally, you kind of got to work with what you have. And a lot of people, oftentimes, if you're not this super duper famous person and you don't have all of these followers, you kind of really don't have to try. People kind of, I'm sorry, if you are a super duper famous person, you don't really have to try. People kind of just drop stuff in your lap, and the effort maybe it's not the same, but when you're doing this as a hobby and you're working with what you got, you kind of got to just roll with the punches. So I do appreciate everybody bearing with me here. So that's all I have in the realm of updates. Last update. Keep an eye out on the YouTube channel. I have been recording some videos, and they're nothing glamorous, just little small things. And, go to the YouTube channel to check those out. The YouTube channel actually has been picking up a little bit of steam. So I guess I'm doing something right. Now, we're not like, Jay Black level here, right? We're not next level views. But at the same time, we are doing what we have to do, and when I say we, I mean I. Doing what I got to do, and I'm getting there slowly but surely. I also revamped the Instagram page a little bit, so check that out, and I will be looking into maybe a business page for upgrading it into a business page and see how that goes. But enough of that, enough of the boring stuff. But hey, if you got any ideas, let me know. Most of you know. The Ryans, the Amandas, the Jaleesas, the several close friends who are also listeners, you all know that I do not and will not shy away from advice. And I'll be upfront. Hey, if it's not for me, if it's something that I don't think is for me, lines up with the essence of the show, then I won't do it. But I'll always have a listening ear. and a silent tongue, as long as you all continue to have a faithful heart. That said, moving on into the first topic. So, as most of you know, and if you don't know, this will be your first time hearing it, but as most of you know, my grandmother passed away on the 24th of June, and her funeral was on Friday, the 3rd of July, and it was an overwhelmingly positive experience. Very few people cried. It had more a mood of celebration and more a mood of positivity than it did somberness or sadness or negativity. And it was a really, really great experience. And I just want to take some of your time to tell you about my experience. So it started with, hey, what should I wear? The majority of my family are Muslim. My father's side of the family, they're Muslim, so they have a lot of their Muslim garb. So I'm not Muslim, so in my mind, I'm like, oh man, I'm going to be the oddball out here, the one in the suit and a tie, and I don't have any of the ceremonial or traditional garbs. And if you are Muslim and you're listening, I do apologize. I don't know what the terms are. I guess I could look them up really quickly, but I don't know what those pieces of clothing are called. But I don't have anything like that. So I'm thinking, oh man, I'm going to be the only one in a suit and tie. And then I kind of had to take a step back and think like, hey, Tim, I'm not here. I'm here for my family, but I'm primarily here for myself, and I'm here for my grandmother. So don't worry about what other people are wearing. Don't worry about what other people are doing and saying. You know why you're there. You know why you're coming. So shout out to Charles. Charles really helped me out with the show. He's been a great supporter of the show. And shout out to everyone else who is a patron of the show. I used those funds to buy a brand new tripod. So that's what I've primarily been using. And it's not a work of art. You know, it's only a $40 tripod, but it's nice. It's one of the most top rated tablet tripods. We're not working with professional equipment here, but I decided to take that with me. I decided to say, hey, let me pack up this tripod. Let me take it with me. And I want to take pictures. I want to take video, especially now more than ever with COVID-19 running rampant. And for anyone who's skeptical, it hasn't gone anywhere. It's still very much here. You know, this may be one of the only times that I may see family. Aside from our differences, and aside from the fact that I'm all the way in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, they're all the way in South Philly, we're not really going to cross paths too often. Let me take some pictures to capture the moment. I have some really nice photo paper that I've been itching to use. I have some really cool ink that I can't let expire. So, hey, let me print some pictures. Let me send some pictures out. I thought it'd be really cool. So I take my tripod, I take my my camera and my tablet down with the idea of taking pictures. And, you know, I caught an Uber down there, and the funeral home was at 1901 Federal Street, so 19th and Federal. And that funeral home has been dealing with our family for quite some time. My father was buried there, countless family members buried there, and the funeral director was a friend of the family. So it was really nice to have that sense of familiarity, but in a really weird way, it was a little bit of apprehension there as well. You know, you're going back to the same place that is only ever associated with death. You don't really know how to deal with that sometimes. But at the same time, it's this sense of comfort because you're familiar with the place. So a lot of conflicting feelings there. So I get down there, a ton of family there, and, you know, the funeral was as beautiful as it could have been given the certain times. You know, our family isn't overwhelmingly wealthy. I didn't know what type of life insurance policies or whatever my grandmother had. So, you know, we got to work with what we got. And at the same time, again, we got COVID. So it was as nice as it could be. It was really nice seeing everybody. And everyone, for the most part, seemed okay. Now, this is the part where, in my opinion, it got pretty interesting. So first things first, I was asked on the spot to take video and photos for the actual funeral outside of the personal ones I was going to take. So that was some next level stuff for me. But it was definitely an area that I embraced. I took on full steam ahead, took on head on, but at the same time, no experience with photography or videography at all. So it was definitely something new for me. But I streamed the funeral, so family in other states who couldn't get out could see it. And I'm in the process of getting that together for them so they can have it with them and view it whenever they want to, rather. But after everything was said and done, we go back to my aunt's, and there's food and there's drinks, and there's a good old time. It felt like a good old fashioned Taylor family cookout. It was really nice. So my grandmother's last name was Taylor, Taylor. So Taylor family cookout. Friends of the family, cousins, first cousins, second cousins, aunts, uncles, grandkids, great grandkids, you name it, they were there. It was a great experience, and it was one of those moments where you actually had to be reminded that your grandmother passed away. And I say that in a positive light. I say that with positivity, and everyone fully embraced the moment. You can tell that a lot of people were itching to get out the house, and some family members down in South Philly, they live close enough together where they can see each other on a regular basis. But there are a lot of us who have been taking this quarantine or stay-at-home order very seriously, or there are a fair amount of us who live a little further away from South Philly where we can't make it down there as often as we would like. And you can tell that everyone was tired of the quarantine, tired of the stay-at-home order, and they embraced the moment. They really did. And there were some people there not wearing masks, unfortunately, but there were a lot of people there wearing masks or keeping their distance and trying to be as safe as they could be, sanitizing their hands, et cetera, making sure their hands were sanitized before they reached into the food and everything. And to be around family, whether you know them or not, and be around positivity and be around just so much love, so much so that it made you forget about your own grandmother's passing, I think is extremely positive, is extremely wonderful. And I can't really say enough about that. I love my grandmother to death. And in fact, I still do. I love the idea of her. I love what she represented, what she currently represents now. And an idea, especially in an organic one, is a living, breathing thing. It doesn't just go away, right? So with that said, she's still very much around and she lives in the memory of all of us. But to have her take a back seat in a negative way, in the sense that her death took a back seat, but to have her life very much be at the forefront of everyone's energy on Friday, it was just out of this world. It was amazing. I loved it. I loved being around it. And there's nothing quite like your own family. There's nothing quite like your blood. And there is a lot of ground to make up with my family in some areas. But for some of us to be able to pick it up without missing a beat, it's just something that you shouldn't take for granted. None of us should take that for granted. Okay. All of us should embrace that as best as we can. That said, there was a particular moment on Friday that I wanted to key in on. And if you've been listening to this show for a while, you know that you all are pretty much my extended family. You all are pretty much my sounding board for my thoughts. And there's one particular cousin who supports me from afar. She understands that, hey, even if I'm not around, it doesn't mean I don't love you. Even if I'm not present, doesn't mean I'm not present, if that makes sense. And her and I have always had this chemistry. We've always had this likelihood of, I don't know, I really can't even put it into words, but she's just always been there for me. She just always took care of me. She always just watched over me. And she was there yesterday, and we just kept missing each other. And I kind of got this strange energy from her that she kind of, in a way, didn't want to be there. I think she wanted to be there for my grandmother, and she even spoke at the funeral, but she didn't want to be at the recession. And I wanted to sit and talk with her, and we always just seem to miss each other, and you know, we don't get to see each other as often as we would like. But I kind of just wonder, should I be bummed about that, y'all? Should I be a little upset that I didn't get a chance to sit and rap with her and talk with her about her family, her kids? You know, her oldest just graduated high school, what's the move for college. She homeschooled her kids. I wanted to talk about her husband, because her husband is never around. I literally have never met him. And I just want to talk about a little bit of that dynamic. And she always seems to say, oh, he doesn't do stuff like this. And, you know, you still have never met him. I just still think there's a little bit more about that. But I don't know how to have those conversations with her without being too invasive. I don't know how to have those conversations with her without her taking offense. And there's a part of me that goes, at the end of the day, you can't really control how someone takes something. You know, at the end of the day, you can't really control what someone's reaction or response will be. Now, you can influence it, but you can't really control it. But this is my favorite cousin. This is my closest cousin. At this point, wasn't always the case, because she was always a little bit older than me. So there was always an age gap there. But right now, us both being adults, she's very much my favorite cousin and closest cousin. And I'm a little bummed that, you know, I missed the opportunity to like just sit down and rap with her, you know, and really pick her brain and just talk to her about family, you know, talk to her about her emotions. I personally feel like she doesn't have that sounding board. So I'm in a unique position, everybody. I'm very much independent, and I'm very much introspective. I'm a huge gamer, and I spend a lot of my time gaming, thinking. I spend long showers thinking. I spend right before bed thinking. When I do go on walks, I spend that time thinking. I try to be as very introspective as I can be. And I try to navigate my thoughts and feelings, whether it be about my relationship and my differences there. How do I deal with that? Whether it be with unresolved feelings for like romantic partners in the past, whether it be the death of my grandmother, whether it be being a Mason. You know, there's so many different thoughts that I have that I try to process. And eventually, whether that be at home with the people who are around me at home, whether that be with you all personally via a phone call, or whether it even be with you all personally right now via a podcast, I have a method. I have an outlet. I have multiple resources to get a lot of this off of my chest. And even if I don't necessarily hear back from some of you, I know I'm going to hear back from at least one of you. And I know that you take what I have to say, you internalize it, and you come back and say, hey, Tim, this is what I think. As somebody from the outside looking in, here's what I think. But one thing that my cousin doesn't have is everything that I just mentioned, to my knowledge. She doesn't seem to have anyone outside of her household. My cousin is a very complicated, and I mean that in a good way, a very complicated, philosophical individual. And I by no means mean any offense by this, but I just feel like, unfortunately, on a daily basis, she isn't around people that she feels like she can go down certain paths with. And I feel like you all can relate to that to a degree. We all have that one friend where we need no alcohol, no drugs, no other substances to have an out-of-body experience with. We can sit down, whether it be in a place like a bar, or whether it be a walk, whether it be a car ride, and you can have a conversation for hours. And you could talk about those taboo topics, those topics that no one ever wants to discuss. Open relationships, your feelings for someone else while you're in a committed relationship, your feelings towards family, your deep, dark desires when it comes to work or just life in general, or travel, or these different things that you experience. You have that dedicated person or that small group of people that you know without a shadow of a doubt there's no judgment, there's no filter, and there's just conversation. There's other people in our lives where we kind of got to peel back a little bit. We can't be as forthcoming. We can't be as verbal as we would like. We can't be as vulnerable as we would like. And my perception, and again, I want to be very, very clear here. There's no way to know that this is the truth. But my perception here is that she doesn't have that on a daily basis. And I feel like I can be that for her. And you all know me well enough by now to know that that's the truth. I'm a very reasonable person. I'm very open-minded. And there are very few things that people have said to me where I would go, oh man, don't talk to me anymore, and kind of like shun them or look down my nose at them. But I feel like I can be that for her, not only just as a family member, but as a friend. And I don't know if she just won't allow people to get to that side of her. I don't know if it's just she doesn't know how to let people get that close to her, or if it's just she just flat out, doesn't want to. She's just not concerned with it, and she's comfortable with where she is. So I would have loved to have some opportunity to sit down with her and talk with her a little bit more. And it's a little unfortunate that it didn't get a chance to happen, but it is what it is. I'll reach out to her. I'll make sure she's okay. And hopefully, 10 years from now, the tune will be different. Hopefully 10 years from now, the conversation will sound a little bit different. And we'll form that bond, that relationship that I know personally I long for. And, go from there. But that was pretty much Friday in a nutshell. That was a good time. It was a great time. I enjoyed it. And I encourage you all to reach out to somebody that you consider family, or someone that is family, and just have a conversation with them, especially if they're older. Tomorrow isn't promised today, and you never know what someone's last moment will be. And trust me, I know it sounds a little bit selfish, but you'll feel much, much better about yourself knowing that you put every effort into having a relationship with somebody before they left this earth, rather than the opposite. So that's my little bit of advice. So I would normally take a break to check in on my Periscope and Facebook followers, but although we do have some viewers, we don't have many comments. So I'm going to save you all the commercial break. So I'm probably taking money out of my pocket here, but I'm only ever earning pennies to the dollar anyway. So that said, I'm just going to keep it trucking. The next topic of conversation that I wanted to bring up is podcasting in general. I had some really cool conversations with some family members on Friday, and you'd be surprised who is into what. And I think oftentimes we don't go about asking them. We don't go about asking like, hey, what do you do for a living? And when that happens, we forego an opportunity to cross paths in that area. So, for example, I have a podcast. I love talking. I love educating, and I love just listening. And if someone has a business, if someone has a passion, if someone has an opinion, I would love to have them on the show to talk about that, just like I talked about at the top of the episode. And lo and behold, I came across a cousin who you all will be hearing from next week. And she has her own business. I won't get too much into it because I don't want to take away from next week's interview. However, she said, hey, I always wanted to start a podcast. And the instant she said that, it kind of took me down memory lane, and I kind of had this surreal moment because I'm like, wow, in this moment, I'm the guru, right? In this moment, I'm the teacher. In this moment, I'm the experienced wise one who has tons of podcasting experience. And the crazy part about that is if any of you came up to me and asked me, although I can give tips, advice, and opinions, I still very much think I'm a rookie. You know, by definition, I'm an amateur. I don't get paid to do this. And obviously, I have a long way to go. But in that moment, it kind of humbled me because I think, although consciously I never take the 45 episodes, well, now 45, at the time 44 episodes for granted, but in a really weird way, I kind of did because, you know, I didn't realize that there are a lot of people out there who don't know what I know. And sometimes people have these really big ideas and they want to get them on paper. They don't really know how to do that. And it's usually for two reasons. It's either out of fear. They're fearful of the challenges. They're fearful of the success. They're fearful of the failure. They're fearful of a lot of different things that come along with starting something new. They're fearful of the change. They're fearful for the growth. But the other one is laziness. And you get a lot of people who don't start something specifically due to lack of effort. You get a lot of people who say they have they like the idea of something, right? Whether they like the idea of marriage, they like the idea of home ownership, they like the idea of going to college, they like the idea of starting a podcast. And then lo and behold, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this and that. Never mind. Yeah, that's a no for me, dog. And they take a step away. So for everyone out there listening, if you're lazy and you need me to validate your laziness and you need me to confirm why you realize that you don't want to do this, and for the people who are just afraid or just purely ignorant, they just don't know where to get started or what to do, I am going to right now walk you through exactly what I went through from beginning to end, from beginning to, what minute are we on? From beginning to minute number 32 in episode 45 as you're listening to this, what my experience and what my journey was like. So starting from the top, this actually all started, its humble beginnings, with a passion that I've had ever since middle school. I have always been an incredibly shy person, believe it or not. And I felt comfortable on stage. And in middle school, we did the Nutcracker. It was a play that we did. And I felt so comfortable in my role. And the director and this was a small middle school, so obviously the director was a teacher. The teacher / director / teacher pulled me aside and said, hey, you're a natural public speaker. And I think, although I did not take him seriously because I wanted to be a computer technician or a professional football coach, those were my dreams and aspirations. I just love football so much, but that's a discussion for Ryan at another time. I'm in another place, but he planted the seed though. He planted the seed that that middle school teacher did. And I'm going to jump forward all the way until 2016, 2017. A really, really close friend of mine, named Ryan. And for those of you who have known me long enough, I mean my adulthood friend Ryan, and not my childhood friend Ryan, but my adulthood friend Ryan. He and I would get together every week, no exaggeration, every week, at this place called McMenamins. It's in technically Mount Airy, but depending on who you ask, Chestnut Hill has a Mount Airy zip code. And we would sit down. They have really, really, really great wings. And I fell in love with a beer there called Hefeweizen. And it's a citrus beer, really heavy, but it's not sweet, but like fruity. and it's really, really nice. And we would just throw those back and just talk. And our conversations used to be so engaging. And I know a lot of you all who are thinking of starting a vlog or a blog or a podcast, or you're feeling the same way. You have that one friend, that one family member, that one outlet where your conversations would just be next level. And I think I can't put into words how much Ryan means to me. And those conversations were the embodiment of our feelings towards each other. We would talk about politics. We would talk about sports. We would talk about monogamy. We would talk about, open relationships. We would talk about sexuality. We would talk about loyalty and what people in the neighborhood that you grew up in, what they deemed as loyal, what really wasn't loyal, and just so many deep, introspective, and philosophical conversations. And it got to the point where that was my drug. And I was addicted to it. I love these conversations. I love talking about these things. And I loved just being a part of that moment. And as I mentioned a few episodes ago, I think it might have been last episode or so, even the people around us became engaged in the conversation. And they sat back and went, hey, here's my thought about this. Or, hey, so there was actually somebody who, and he couldn't tell us what he did, but he looked that, you ever look at somebody and they just look expensive? But, he stopped by the table one time that we were sitting in, and he goes, hey, I just want to say, you two young men, keep it up, and just paraphrasing here, he really liked what he heard. And there were times where Ryan and I noticed it, but we just kept talking. But we would notice the people around us paying attention to our conversation. They would be engaged enough and interested enough to be involved in these conversations, but they would be too, I guess, intimidated or fearful to partake, or maybe, that anxiety you get when you're dealing with people you don't know. You don't want to jump in and be like, hey, or here's my thought about X, Y, or Z. But they listened. We were talking. They were listening. And you can tell that they were really engaged and they really liked it. And Ryan and I had a falling out, one that to this day I'm not proud of at all. He and I both know why it was, and I'm glad to say that we're closer, ironically, and this is the way it should be. When you have a falling out with somebody, you have a disagreement with somebody, the ideal situation, unless it's just not meant to be, is for you two to come back together and be even stronger. Your wounds should make you stronger. And Ryan and I had a falling out, and it was about the time that he and I were discussing on starting this thing. And Ryan has a huge love for basketball, sports in general, basketball and football, and I have a huge love for football. We were going to basically become amateur commentators, and we were going to just going to be a nerd real quick. And for everyone listening right now, if this isn't your thing, I'm sorry. Just bear with me for a second. So people can live stream video games, and two games that are really popular are Madden Football and NFL 2K, among others. Of course, FIFA is the most popular sports video game in the world, FIFA soccer. But they have commentators, and you can commentate on those. So he and I were going to get something together. Other people were going to play in actual tournaments now, for money, for prizes, for notoriety, the whole nine. And Ryan and I were going to commentate on these. And we had chemistry, we had know-how, we had knowledge, and it was going to be a thing. Unfortunately, we had a falling out, and it never came to be. But that passion, that wantingness to speak in front of people never went away. And one day I said, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast. And I had 4 names, one of which you know now. I'll talk if you'll listen. And I still have the note. I said I wasn't going to throw it away because I wanted to remember all of the names. But it was like the unpopular opinion. It was like factually unfactual or something along those lines. I forget what it was. I got to go find it. And one more that I can't think of, and I'll talk if you'll listen. And I took it around the job. I showed it to Amanda. I showed it to Bree. I showed it to Shantae. I showed it to a few different people. And I said, which one of these do you think? And I'll Talk If You'll Listen won out. And I really like that. I'll Talk If You'll Listen. I really like that. I Googled it to see if anybody else had it. And this is where the nostalgia and reminiscing kind of gets blurred into, hey, this is what you need to do. So this is what I did. Is this the right way? No. Is this the wrong way? Definitely not. But hey, it is what it is. So take it and run with it. So once I settled on I'll Talk If You'll Listen, I Googled it and I tried to find any semblance of anything else that existed about this thing. Were there any blogs? Was there a current podcast? Is there anything? Because sometimes it's so hard. And for anyone listening out there who's a writer, who's a composer, who's a dancer, I got a little cousin who's a dancer, who's a creator, who is any in the artistic field, you know how difficult it is to be original. It's really difficult to be original. So I go Google it. I see if there's anything else out there, and I couldn't find anything. I found very close, like similar, like there was a book called like You'll Talk, I'll Listen or something like that, but nothing had I'll Talk If You'll Listen. So I go, okay, great, excellent, perfect. So the next thing I did was, you guessed it, I Googled how to start a podcast. Now, a lot of you might be listening and going, well, duh. And some of you are probably listening going, oh man, that's so obvious. Why didn't I think of that? Let me just give you a walk through my psyche here for a second. I know I have a voice memo app on my iPhone. I know I could download some audio recording software. But when I Google how to start a podcast, what I was actually doing was, hey, what is the best way? Because there's so many different ways out there. It's like, hey, do I take 95? Do I take 76? Do I take Broad Street? What do I take? And at the end of the day, you're just trying to get to Center City, So when I Google how to start a podcast, my goal here, or there, I should say, was, hey, let me do some research on the different ways to start and go from there. So the first thing that I came across was the most important thing. I came across a few different lists. It was like the 5 things you need to start a podcast, or whatever the case may be. And the first couple of things were obvious, right? And I'm sure I'm probably taking Ryan down memory lane because after our falling out and we started talking again, he remembers these conversations. It's so surreal talking about them now. But I said, okay, I'm looking at this list and said, okay, the first thing you need is a computer or laptop or phone with audio recording software. And I was like, I got that. I'm ahead of the game, baby. I got that. So, I got a laptop. Okay. Audio recording software. So then I had to step away from the list and go audio recording software for podcasting. So then I saw that, it was a few different things. Like, I think there was one called Blueberry or something like that. There was Spreaker, and there were like 2 or 3 more. I did a little bit of research and I read a couple of reviews, and I saw that Spreaker was the best route because it was free. And not to say that there weren't other free options out there. It was free. It seemed easy to use. You didn't have to pay for anything not up until you wanted to. And they do a slew of other things, which I'll talk about in a second. So I was like, okay, cool. I got my host. I got my audio recording software, which is Audacity. I looked that up. Audacity is something else that's free. And I got my laptop. Okay, what else do I need? A microphone. And I remember going to Ryan like, oh, I'm going to save up for a microphone. I have a really, really close friend of mine, Jerry. And I contacted Jerry and I said, hey, Jerry, I need a microphone. What do you recommend? And Ryan and Jerry pretty much tore me a new one. But Ryan and Jerry in particular told me like, hey, people are tuning in not for the quality, how great your voice sounds, how, what microphone you have, what your setup is, how good your camera is, all of that. They're tuning in for you. They want to hear what you have to say. And in the moment, it's tough to kind of like imagine that. You go like, no one really wants to hear what I want to say. But then I thought about those moments in McMenamins with Ryan and how we have 2-3 tables around us tuned in to what we're saying. And I said, you know what? You're right. So I'm just going to use the microphone that I got. So I had a Turtle Beach headset because I'm an avid gamer, as you all know. So I took my Turtle Beach headset. It uses a 3.5mm audio jack. If you're not sure what that is, it's the circular jack that you plug headphones in before, most phones got rid of it. So I said, okay, hey, I can use this. So I plugged it in and I finished up with the list, and it basically gave me a little bit more information about Spreaker. And again, I'll tell you about that later on. And guess what I did, y'all? I downloaded Audacity. It's free. That's AUDACITY, I believe. I'm not looking at it right now. And I downloaded it. I hit record and I recorded it. I did a test recording. I had a few topics that I borrowed from Ryan's and the conversations I had with Ryan, and I kind of expanded on those topics a little bit. And I remember recording it. I think it was like 24 minutes long, something along those lines. I was a little surprised because another fear of mine was, hey, I'm going to be like Bill Burr. I'm doing this thing by myself here, and I don't have a co-host. I don't have a guest. What am I going to do? And lo and behold, it was fine. And I was pleasantly surprised. I saved it. I did not edit it because I had no idea what that was. Yeah, so I saved it. I sent it to Ryan. I think I sent it to Charles. Hey, Chuck, when you listen to this, shoot me a text and let me know if I sent it to you. I don't remember if I sent it to you. But I played it for a couple of people. It wasn't many. It had to be like 3 max. And he said, oh, it's good. I like it. Da da da. And that's all I need. Like, I can't tell you how important it is to have people in your life who are going to be like 100% objective with you. They're going to tell you if you're wrong. They're going to tell you if it sounds good. They're going to tell you it's bad. And just to go on a tangent really quickly, I can't tell you how frustrating it is to see people go on social media and post toxic things, and they got a bunch of yes men and women around them telling them about, oh yeah, you don't need that job, quit. They don't know what they got. Oh yeah, you don't need to get health insurance, or oh yeah, you don't need to, I don't know, whatever, and they got a bunch of yes men and women around them perpetuating like their toxic culture. It's like so frustrating. So I'm very thankful for the people in my life who will tell me straight up, yo, that was dope. And I know they mean it. I know they're not just telling me. My mother used to tell me back in the day that I was very handsome, and she used to tell me I would be the first black president. Well, guess what, Mom? Barack Obama beat me to it, first and foremost. But secondly, I never took her seriously because I'm like, that's my mom. She's supposed to tell me stuff like that. What mom is, unless she's abusive or toxic, what mom is sitting here telling their child that they're ugly, like what, and that she doesn't want great things for them. You know what I mean? So that said, to have my close friends around me to say, hey, this is dope, or you did a good job, and for them to mean it and be sincere about it, and for them to say, you needed to work on it here, or hey, that really wasn't that good. I've even had moments where like I've had like Ryan and Chuck in particular go, hey, I don't really have an opinion about that because that's not an area of interest for me. So for someone to be objective like that and say, hey, I can't say whether good or bad because that's just not my thing, I think that's huge. Guess what I did, y'all? I forgot to turn the volume off of my computer here. Good thing I didn't get any notifications. That would have been 3 episodes in a row. Anyway, so after I did that recording, I kind of say, okay, hey, what's next? So I looked up Spreaker, and it was pretty self-explanatory. And Spreaker is just like Speaker, but with an R after the P. So Spreaker, Spreaker. And they're so dope. I can't wait to tell y'all about them. But anyway, so I uploaded very first episode. And for those of you who haven't listened, go and listen to my first episode. It's on my YouTube channel. It's not on anything else. It's only on my YouTube. Only on my YouTube. So I record episode 1. It was about Tiffany Haddish. I record episode 2 as a follow-up to Tiffany Haddish because I had high ambitions for the show. My thought process was like, hey, I'm going to record the show, and then I'm going to get so many different responses sent to the email that I'm going to have people's responses to read on the email. And not only did I have one response, I had to go and like ask people like, hey, can you listen to the last episode? Can you listen to the last episode and email the show what you think? Oh man, it was crazy. But anyway, I uploaded both of those to Spreaker, and what Spreaker does is they give you a customized RSS feed. I don't know what that means or what it stands for, but basically it's a link. It's a dedicated link. Think of it as like a YouTube channel, but for like just audio. And it's a dedicated link. Hey Chris, if you're listening, if you could like hit me up and tell me what that means, I would really appreciate it. I know you're a big fan of Google, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna forget as soon as I'm done recording this. But you take that link, that RSS link, and you give it to different people, and that's how they pull your information for your podcast. So what I did was I Googled how to put your podcast on Apple. And I got the instructions. I went to that website, and they need what's called your RSS feed. So I gave them the RSS feed, and next thing, just like that, it took them, they said 24 hours, but it was less than 24 hours to review the podcast. And bam, just like that, I was on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. And the crazy part about that was I thought it had to be this long, extensive thing. I thought I had to have a mass following. I thought I had to be like famous. I thought all this stuff. And then before I could get approved, and no, that wasn't the case. And then I did the same thing for other outlets. And then that's pretty much it. After that, I YouTubed how to edit in Audacity. And I saw 5-minute videos. I saw 12-minute videos. When I really wanted to buckle down, it was like a 30-minute video. And in today's day and age, there's absolutely no excuse, no reason to not know how to do something. You got Google, you got YouTube, and they are the number 1 and number 2 search engines in the world. So people know how to use it a little bit. So yeah, I Googled how to edit in Audacity. It was really easy. And I kind of took that and ran with it. And then here I am 45 episodes later. Somewhere around episode, I don't know, it had to be around episode 10 and 15. I thought like, hey, I want to have interviews, but it's going to be difficult trying to be mobile and getting to people's homes and availability and jobs and all this other thing, kids and all these other things. So I said, hey, there's got to be a way where I can do like a phone interview and record it. So I looked up Google Voice. So if you've been on the show before, I use Google Voice. If you haven't, that's what I use, Google Voice. And I recorded these interviews. I saved them, and then I would edit them into the show. And you're pretty much just dropping the interview into the show. So it was great. And then that's all she wrote. It's simple, but simple can be very complicated for someone who doesn't know and understand it. So at the end of the day, it's much easier than you think. So lo and behold, it's crazy. I got my cousin, that very same cousin that I was talking about earlier on in the show, She's actually now here in the Facebook Live. And normally I edit this out, everybody. Normally I edit this out, but because it's relevant, I'm going to leave it in. But Angel says she's very proud of me. And Angel, I kind of poured my heart out a little bit earlier in this episode. So I don't know if you I know you support the show. And what I mean by that is I know you support me. I know you support the topics I discuss. I know you've shared these videos. You've been very much a supporter. And just to be clear for Angel and for everybody else, support has many different faces. And sometimes you can support people from afar. Sometimes you can support them from up close. But you need to consider how many different definitions of support there are. Because if you're only looking for one type of support, when you don't get it, you're going to feel slighted. So that said, to my cousin listening now, watching now, I kind of poured my heart out a little bit about our relationship earlier on in this episode. So if you haven't listened, or if you don't listen, hopefully this will be the first episode you listen to. And after you listen to it, I would very much appreciate it if you could tell me what you think. And I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions about it. Also, and tells into the show about Spreaker. So what is a podcast host? A podcast host is someone who basically maintains your podcast episodes and they distribute them to other outlets so you don't have to. So the best way that best example I can give is, let's say you have one friend that you can go to that'll tell all of your other friends about maybe an event that you're going to have soon. And that friend does all of the legwork for you. Now, you still have to come up with the message. You still have to plan the event. You still have to get everything together. But you tell your friend will store your invites. Your friend will tell other people about the event. And your friend will, I guess, find new ways to distribute your event as well. So that's pretty much what Spreaker does. Now, this is why Spreaker is so cool. And I don't want to take you all away from, your Apple Podcasts. I don't want to take you away from YouTube. I don't want to take you away from Spotify or anything. That's not my goal. Keep listening on those platforms by all means. Some podcasts are exclusive to those platforms. That said, this is why Spreaker is so cool in my opinion. First things first, it's for podcasters and podcast listeners. It's so cool. It's like a one-stop shop. It has a lot of your favorite podcasts on there, but it's almost like the social media of podcasting. You can go and create a profile, and just like on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, and you can follow your author or your podcaster. You can follow these people. So for example, right now I only have one podcast, I'll Talk If You'll Listen, and I've been pumping my heart and soul into the show. However, there have been other ideas that I thought about that I wanted to put out there. I thought about maybe watching some shows that have been around for a really long time and just doing like 10 to 15 minute reviews or thoughts of these shows. I thought about a lot of different things. And let's say I came out with a brand new podcast. If you followed me, you would get a notification. So if you take somebody like, let's take Angela Yee, for example. Angela Yee, if you listen to The Breakfast Club, you should be very familiar with her. She is the female personality on the Breakfast Club. She also has a podcast or another show called Lip Service. So let's say, for example, she was on Spreaker and you followed her on Spreaker. And let's say she was on a Breakfast Club first and then came out with Lip Service later. You would get a notification. You would know. In fact, you can click on Angela Yee's name and see every single last work that she's done. If it's hers anyway. Not if she's like featured on something else. But if it's hers, you'll get to see it. So it's pretty cool. So that's from one aspect it's cool. Another aspect that is cool is you can like each episode and comment on each episode, similar to in a YouTube fashion. So to my knowledge, if you go, you can't like and comment via Spotify. You can only follow or subscribe well, in Spotify terms, following is subscribing. So you can only do that with Spotify. With iHeartRadio, same deal. I'm drawing a blank here. With Google Podcasts and with Apple Podcasts, you can follow or subscribe to the show. You'll get notifications when the show becomes available. And you can write a review for the show. So, hey, sidebar, if you do listen on any of those platforms, somebody did leave me a review. I don't know who it is because they didn't use their real name, used like an alias. But it was a heartwarming review. So, hey, if you don't mind going writing a review, if you do listen on Apple, I'd really appreciate it. But that's cool. But you can't really engage on a per episode basis. So YouTube is great, but you do have some restrictions with YouTube, unless you, of course, you subscribe and everything. But Spreaker and YouTube are very similar in that line. Just with Spreaker, you can comment on each episode. So you actually can go to each episode and comment, hey, here are my thoughts. This is what I think. So in the past, some of you all have emailed into the show. Some of you all have emailed, hey, here are my thoughts. Here are my opinions. And they got expressed on the show that way. But if you go and comment under each episode on Spreaker, it'll give me an extra outlet to go and see what you all think and feel. And even when a lot of you tune in live, like some of you all are doing now on the Facebook or Periscope app, you don't necessarily engage because you kind of just sit back and listen. And that's fine. That's almost kind of a part of the goal. You just sit back and listen. But after you listen to it, and some people actually listen to it twice. I do know some listeners who decide to listen to it twice. And for those of you that listen to it twice and you digest and you think about it, use Spreaker as your outlet. Go on Spreaker, find an episode, just jot down some thoughts. And I would love it. It would warm my heart. It would make me feel so great to see your comments live and to respond to them. And I would really appreciate it. So Spreaker is just great. It's a great ecosystem. I really, really like it. It takes all the manual labor away from the podcaster. So I highly recommend it. I remember when Spotify, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio became eligible for me to distribute to. All I did was literally hit one button on Spreaker's website. And then next thing you know, after a verification process, which again was all automatic, I didn't have to do anything. Next thing you know, my podcast is on Spotify. My podcast is on iHeartRadio. My podcast is available on an app that is primarily used in India. So potentially, I could have listeners in the subcontinent of India. And the reason that that's so cool, outside of having your voice heard across the globe, is the fact that Spreaker made it all possible. It had nothing to do with my influence. It had nothing to do with me sharing a bunch of times on social media. It had everything to do, well, I'm not going to say everything. I should give myself some credit. But it had a lot to do with Spreaker. So again, Spreaker's great. If you're just a listener and you just want to listen to some of your podcasts on Spreaker, go that route. I know a lot of podcasters pay attention to their comments. So if you want to find new ways to interact with the show, do it. You know, that's a great way to interact with the show. If you want to create a podcast, then by all means, go to Spreaker. It's great. There's other options out there, but I highly endorse Spreaker. Highly endorse Spreaker. But that's pretty much all I had, guys. There was another topic that I wanted to talk about. It was a little bit political, and we're already over the hour mark at this point. And I think right now, although politics are very interesting, no one wants to hear about them too much right now, at least for this episode. So I'm going to save that topic. I'm going to sit on it. And I also want to do a little bit more reading and educate myself a little bit more on the topics that I wanted to talk about. Basically, the history of the Republican and Democratic Party and why we should all basically vote independent and why parties are essentially useless. But I didn't want to just come from an anecdotal or emotional perspective. I actually wanted to come with some data, some history, some facts, et cetera, some polling results, et cetera, et cetera. So That said, I appreciate everybody stopping by, tuning in. I appreciate everyone taking the time to view me on the Facebook app or the Periscope, and let me know. And, hopefully we can get something going, work some magic here. Keep an eye on YouTube too. Like I said, my very first 2 episodes, I did not post on Spreaker. So all I had to do is post on Spreaker and it automatically goes to everything else. I did not post it on Spreaker because Spreaker isn't smart enough to distinguish an older episode versus a new episode depending on when it got uploaded. So for example, if I were to upload episode 1 right now, or publish I should say, because it's on Spreaker, it's just not published. If I were to publish episode 1 right now, Spreaker would say, hey, there's a new episode. So if you all were following me on Spreaker, like I just talked about, you would get a notification saying, hey, there's a new episode. Tim put out a new episode. And then you would look at it and you'll say Tiffany Haddish, and you'll read it and you'll see that it's 24 minutes long or something like that. And you'll go, what the heck is Tim talking about? Because it's like a topic from literally over 2 years ago. But it is on YouTube. Episodes 1 and 2 of the show is on YouTube, are on YouTube, I should say. So go and check that out. Let me know what you think, and I would love for you to listen to it to see how far I came. How far I've come, I don't know, but it's been a huge journey between episode 1 and episode 45. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, thanks for sticking around, everybody. I'm going to get to editing the show. I'm sure it'll be a fun experience like it always is. #sarcasm. And till the next time, I'll keep talking if you'll listen. Take care.